October 15, 1940, a darkened movie theater. The audience has been watching Charlie Chaplin for 90 minutes without hearing his voice. They've laughed at his physical comedy, gasped at his satire, and marveled at his silence. The tramp has always been mute, a universal figure who transcends language. But now, in the final scene, something unprecedented happens. Chaplin opens his mouth and speaks, not as the tramp, not as a character, as himself. For 6 minutes, he delivers a speech that will echo through generations, a plea for humanity, democracy, and compassion in a world consumed by fascism and war. It is the most powerful moment in cinema history, and it is the moment Charlie Chaplin breaks his own greatest rule. Because for 25 years, Chaplin had refused to speak on screen. He had built an empire on silence. He had resisted the talkies revolution, convinced that sound would destroy the purity of cinema. He was the last king of the silent era, defiant against progress. So why did he finally speak? This is the story of that choice and why it changed everything. By 1927, Charlie Chaplin was the most famous person on earth. His films had made him unfathomably wealthy. His face was recognized in every corner of the globe. He was more than an actor. He was a cultural phenomenon, a living symbol of cinema itself. And he had achieved it all without saying a word. The tramp didn't need dialogue. His comedy was physical, emotional, universal. A man slipping on a banana peel is funny in every language. A hungry vagabond staring longingly at food through a restaurant window needs no subtitles. Chaplin had perfected the art of storytelling through movement, expression, and timing. He believed sound would ruin that purity. Then, in 1927, The Jazz Singer was released, the first feature-length film with synchronized dialogue. Audiences went wild. Overnight, silent films became obsolete. Studios scrambled to retrofit their productions with sound. Actors whose careers depended on physicality suddenly needed voices, and many couldn't adapt. Hollywood panicked, but Chaplin didn't. He released City Lights in 1931, a completely silent film. 4 years after sound had revolutionized the industry, critics predicted disaster. Silent films are dead, they said. Chaplin is finished. They were wrong. City Lights became one of the highest-grossing films of the year. Audiences didn't care about sound when the emotion was that powerful. Chaplin had proven his point. Silence wasn't a limitation. It was a choice. But the world was changing in ways Chaplin couldn't ignore. By the mid-1930s, Europe was collapsing into fascism. Adolf Hitler had risen to power in Germany, spreading propaganda that dehumanized millions. Mussolini controlled Italy. Francisco Franco waged civil war in Spain. The global order was fracturing, and democracy itself seemed on the verge of extinction. Chaplin watched in horror. He had always been political. His films subtly criticized capitalism, industrialization, and inequality. But this was different. This wasn't economic injustice. This was existential evil, and silence suddenly felt like cowardice. In 1938, Chaplin announced his next project, The Great Dictator, a satire mocking Adolf Hitler. It would be his first film with dialogue. After 2 decades of refusing sound, he was finally ready to speak. But not because technology had convinced him, because the world demanded it. You can't satirize fascist rhetoric without language. You can't dismantle propaganda without words. And you can't fight a dictator who controls speech by staying silent. Filming The Great Dictator was agonizing. Chaplin wrote the entire script himself, obsessing over every word. He composed the music, directed every scene, and starred in dual roles, a Jewish barber and the dictator Adenoid Hinkle. But the film's climax haunted him, the final speech. In the script, the Jewish barber is mistaken for Hinkle and forced to address a massive rally. The crowd expects propaganda. Instead, the barber delivers a passionate plea for humanity, condemning dictatorship and calling for compassion. Chaplin knew this speech would break the fourth wall. It wasn't the barber speaking, it was him, Charlie Chaplin, stepping out of character, looking directly at the camera and addressing the world. His advisors begged him to cut it. It's too political, they warned, too preachy, too long. Audiences want comedy, not a sermon. Chaplin refused. He had stayed silent for 25 years. If he was finally going to speak, it had to mean something. He rehearsed the speech obsessively. He recorded it dozens of times, tweaking inflections, adjusting pauses, perfecting the rhythm. The crew watched in stunned silence months as Chaplin transformed from comedian to orator. When he finally filmed the scene, he didn't stop the cameras for 6 minutes. One continuous take. No cuts, no edits, just Chaplin speaking directly to the world. The speech begins quietly, almost apologetically. "I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible." Then it builds. Chaplin's voice rises, filled with urgency and passion. "We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness." He condemns greed, hatred, and nationalism. He calls out dictators by name, though thinly veiled. He addresses soldiers directly. "Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you and enslave you. You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men." And then the climax. "Let us fight for a new world, a decent world that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. Let us fight to free the world." The camera holds on Chaplin's face. Tears stream down his cheeks. He isn't acting anymore. This is real. When the take ended, the set was silent. The crew didn't know whether to applaud or weep. The Great Dictator premiered in October 1940. Critical reaction was divided. Some hailed it as a masterpiece. "Chaplin has finally found his voice, and it is magnificent," wrote one critic. Others called it self-indulgent. 6 minutes of preaching ruins an otherwise brilliant satire, another complained. Isolationist groups in America condemned the film as war propaganda. The FBI added it to Chaplin's file, suspecting communist sympathies. Germany and Italy banned it immediately. Neutral countries refused to screen it, fearing diplomatic consequences. Even some of Chaplin's allies questioned the speech. "You've broken the magic," one friend told him. "The tramp doesn't speak. You've killed him." Chaplin didn't argue, because they were right. The tramp was dead. The moment Chaplin spoke, the illusion shattered. The universal everyman became a specific political voice. But Chaplin didn't regret it. "The world was burning," he later wrote. "Staying silent would have been a betrayal." Within months, the world changed. December 1941, Pearl Harbor, America entered World War II. Suddenly, The Great Dictator wasn't controversial. It was prophetic. The U.S. government encouraged theaters to screen it. The film became a recruitment tool. Soldiers watched it before deployment. The final speech was played on radio, broadcast to millions. Chaplin's words took on a life beyond cinema. Resistance fighters in occupied Europe memorized the speech, reciting it in hidden basements. Jewish families in ghettos whispered it to each other as a prayer for survival. The speech that Hollywood wanted to cut became one of the most quoted pieces of rhetoric in history. After the war, journalists asked Chaplin why he broke his silence. His answer was simple: "I stayed quiet as long as I could, but there comes a moment when silence becomes complicity." Chaplin had built his career on the universality of silence. The tramp belonged to everyone because he said nothing. No accent, no dialect, no specific identity. He was everyman. But in 1940, everyman was being slaughtered by the millions. And silence, no matter how universal, couldn't fight that. So Chaplin spoke. Not because he wanted to, because he had to. And in doing so, he proved something profound. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is break your own rules. But speaking came with consequences. After The Great Dictator, Chaplin's relationship with Hollywood deteriorated. His politics made him a target. The FBI surveillance intensified. His personal scandals were weaponized against him. By 1952, he was exiled from America. He never made another film with the same cultural impact. Limelight 1952 was melancholic and nostalgic. A King in New York 1957 was bitter. A Countess from Hong Kong 1967 was a commercial failure. Chaplin had lost his audience, not because he wasn't talented, but because the world had moved on. The Tramp was a relic of a simpler time. The political activist Chaplin was controversial, divisive, complicated. He had traded universality for specificity, silence for voice, and he couldn't go back. Today, The Great Dictator final speech has been viewed hundreds of millions of times. It's used in classrooms, protests, and political campaigns. It's quoted by activists fighting for democracy, refugees fleeing persecution, and anyone resisting tyranny. The speech transcends its original context. Written in 1939 about Hitler, it applies to every authoritarian regime, every despot, every moment when humanity must choose between silence and resistance. Chaplin's words remain painfully relevant. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took will return to the people. These aren't just lines from a film, they're a manifesto. In his later years, Chaplin expressed ambivalence. He was proud of the great dictator, but he mourned the loss of the tramp. "I killed him," Chaplin admitted. "The moment I spoke, he was gone." But would he do it differently? No, because some moments demand more than art. Some moments demand action. Chaplin spent 25 years perfecting the art of silence, but when the world needed a voice, he gave it. And that speech, those 6 minutes, changed cinema forever. Not because it was technically innovative, not because it was perfectly written, but because it was necessary. Charlie Chaplin built his empire on silence. He became the most famous person in the world without saying a word. He proved that emotion, movement, and humanity needed no language. But his most enduring legacy is a speech he didn't want to give, a speech that destroyed his greatest creation, a speech that cost him his career. And yet, it's the thing people remember most, because in the end, silence can take you far. But there are moments when speaking is the only thing that matters. Charlie Chaplin spoke once, and the world is still listening.